Welcome to the Vaxa Bureau Intelligence Optimised podcast. Today I'm joined by Georgia Barkell, the managing partner of Sprint Venture Capital. Georgia has a distinguished career in banking, especially around liquidity and risk profiles. Georgia, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Todd. It's great to be here.
Well, today we're going to talk and get right into the weeds on something that's really sexy at the moment, and people are asking a lot of questions about venture capital and what venture capital's doing in the Indo-Pacific. You've got a long and distinguished career, as I mentioned earlier, around identifying liquidity and risk opportunities. Tell me, what's Sprint up to?
Thanks, Todd. So at Sprint, we invest in early stage technology startups. We look for those that are making an impact and building a better future. So one of the areas we look at is around defense and AI and all the adjacencies to defense as well, such as agriculture and things like that. So we particularly focus on very early stage technology startups that are really innovative and building some new technology. And we think that the defense space this is a real greenfield for investment, because there is so much technology coming out. There's so much focus being put towards defense and sovereign security and safety. And we think that this is the focus for the next 10 years.
Right. And so in your role, you'd be seeing a lot of different proposals, IMs come over your desk for various sorts of tech. What are some of the sexy things that you're seeing, and what are they supporting?
I don't know if any of it's sexy, Todd, but I'll do my best. So we just looked at a startup recently that was in the autonomous vehicle space, so using really interesting technology in the defense space specifically for operating drones remotely, vehicles, all sorts of computer vision in different applications. That was a really interesting one. Another one I met recently is a startup called Exoflare. They've just done a really incredible capital raising round with a number of really sophisticated VCs, and they do biosecurity threat management. So where there are threats to our biosecurity in Australia, they monitor and manage those, which is just a really interesting perspective on defence tech. And I think the definition of defence tech is something that can be explored as well. And it's really about providing that defence for our sovereign nation in many different ways. And it can be from things that are tools that are used in warfare, but also things that onshore can help protect our borders as well, like cybersecurity, biosecurity, threat management, and making sure we are a sustainable economy as well, that we have agriculture that can support and feed our nation, advanced manufacturing, things like that, so we can support our country in the event of a war.
Wow, and hopefully it doesn't come to that. That is very impactful, and you mentioned that's a theme for Sprint Venture Capital. So what is it that you look for? You've got let me go back a step. You've got a very experienced team with you who have been in the business for 30 plus years. What is it you look for when you're evaluating a company to back? Is it product? Is it people?
Yeah, it's a number of things. And I think there's a couple of points specifically in defense that are really important. We know that the defense industry is you have to have a global focus in defence. So while Australia and our government should be our first customer, and it should be almost a sandpit to an extent to develop product market fit and the right margins around our products, really we should be looking at a global perspective. We should be looking at the Indo-Pacific region. The US is a huge market, Europe and the UK as well. So we're looking for a business with a global focus, and that also includes global connections too, because you can't be sitting in Australia wanting to sell to the US government and not knowing a single person, even in the country, let alone in defence. So those are some of the things. Those are some of the things we look for in this space as well. it's not always required. You can have an exceptional founder that is not a subject matter expert in this space, but that definitely helps. So where an example of where you don't have a subject matter expert, for instance, is Gilmore Space, which is a Gold Coast-based space startup. The founder, Adam Gilmore, doesn't actually have a space background. He's got an investment banking background. So that's quite an unusual situation. Usually the founders are subject matter experts in this space. They have the knowledge, the connections, they have the understanding how the industry works as well, because as we know, defence tech tends to be very capital intensive and sales cycles tend to be very long. So that real understanding around the industry is important. Then in a general sense, what we look for in startups is the quality of the founders. Startups are very difficult. It's a long path, ups and downs. We're looking for founders with absolute conviction in what they're doing, a deep understanding of their problem, the resilience to make it through those ups and downs of building a business and all the setbacks that they can face. We look at the dynamic of the founding team as well, what skills they bring, what experience. And then we also look at the market too. So when we're looking at the market size and the product and the technology that's being developed, how big is that market and what is the opportunity? And alongside the market goes a competitive landscape analysis as well. So you might be looking at a market that could be $100 billion. But if there are already a large number of incumbents in that space and also a lot of startups coming up in that space, your addressable market will actually be significantly lower than that. So it's really important, particularly in defence. There is a lot of technology being built at the moment around things like autonomous vehicles and stuff like that, where the competitive landscape is very broad, very deep, lots of different types of technology trying to solve this problem as well. So that's something we really look at too when we're assessing a startup for investment.
Wonderful. And you mentioned a great success story in Gilmore Space, and we've had the pleasure at Vaxa of supporting the Gilmore team early in their adventure. And at first, I remember when some information came across our desk, these guys are crazy. This is stuff dreams are made of. And Adam and James and the whole team at Gilmore have just created this amazing product that makes Australians proud.
Wow.
And obviously, there's businesses that Sprint and yourself have been involved in that have come across your desk and said, "Oh, let's give these guys a go," and have gone on to great success. Are there any there that stand out for you?
Yeah, there's a really incredible infrastructure startup we invested in called Vapor, based out of Sydney. And again, this is not in a clear defence space, but it's an adjacency to it as well. We need to make sure that infrastructure typically has a very low digitization. And so this is a great opportunity for startups to grow technology in this space and for investors to put capital. And what Vapor does is they use artificial intelligence to do what a person had done manually up until this point. And they run maintenance cameras down pipelines, and using their tool, they can make an assessment on what maintenance or repairs need to be made in pipelines and what would take one person a day to watch 8 hours of footage and document that. This program takes minutes. So that one is incredible and really getting picked up in the UK and Europe at the moment. Lots of interest in the US and making sure our infrastructure is robust also contributes to our sovereign security.
Wow. And you touched on something there that's been a bit of a theme with your focus on who to support, and that's around export markets and how products can be taken overseas. How do you help your clients or the products that you invest in break into those markets?
That's a really good question. There's actually quite a lot of government support around this. There's Austrade, as we know, on a national level. If you're a Queensland-based startup, there is a government department called Trade Investment Queensland. And all of these government departments are really a great place to start because they can do a number of things for you. They have offices in various locations overseas. So depending on the market that you are targeting, that we usually have someone nearby that can help. And the first thing to do would be the market mapping, understanding, again, the competitive landscape, who the customers are, where they're located, what their buying profile is, what their needs are. The needs might be different to the needs of the customers that we have in Australia. So really doing that market mapping exercise to understand, in order to plan the expansion into that region is really important. And then through connections through government and through ourselves, and also through investors that you might bring in onto your cap table as well, you can really access some great markets overseas. There's also consultants and specialized people that can help startups expand overseas, which is great. And what I like to go through with our startups when we're talking about this phase of their growth is that we really need a 6 to 12 month time frame to plan for this, to execute it properly. And there's a number of things we need to consider. Do the founders move over? Do they hire someone there? How do they go about doing it? And depending on what region you're targeting as well, for instance, Indo-Pacific is, as we know, very, very varied, and a number of countries, all with different cultures, different approaches. Even the US, one country, 52 states. Choosing the place where you are going to base yourself and operate from is really important too. So there's a number of things we go through with our startups when we're looking at expanding globally. But that is something that we as venture capital investors look for when we're investing in a startup, is that global perspective, because we need the companies that we invest in to access a much bigger market that we have available in Australia in order to get the sort of growth and returns that we would expect. So it's a big focus for us on which markets would you target first, how would you go about doing it, and really putting in that planning to do so.
Sure. And going back a step, you mentioned early stage. What does that mean? If you could just explain that to me.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So early stage, if we look at the life cycle of a business, and if we use the terminology used in investing, we start investing at pre-seed. So what that means is, and there can be investment even prior to that in from angels and friends and family and things like that. Pre-seed means that the founders have an idea. They might be starting to build a product. They might be partway through building a product, but that's the extent of their business. They might have an idea, and that's it. They might be building a product, but they certainly don't have any customers. They certainly don't have any revenue. They might not even have any employees beyond the founding team. So that's what pre-seed means. And we're really investing in that opportunity and the founders and the potential market size. Then the next stage that we invest in is called seed. And that is when a startup has developed their product, but not yet gone to market. They might have done trials or have some initial early supporting customers who may or may not be paying anything for the product. And they're really on that verge of entering the market. So that's the seed stage. Series A we invest in as well. So that's when a startup is starting to display what is called product market fit. So where they are able to sell their product to their target customers at the price that they that they expect, that is based on the metrics of the business and the gross profit margin that they're trying to achieve. Within the sales cycle that is expected in that industry, and they're starting to display signals such as a certain level of revenue. They've often got, quite a number of staff by that stage. And Series A is when they're either just entering a new market or they're thinking about how they're going to go about doing that. And then, so Sprint invests pre-seed, seed, and Series A, but then beyond that, there are a number of other stages of the growth of a business as well. So it's very early stage, very early.
Wow. And another thematic which is really important around critical industries and national security that Sprint has focused on is health and aged care. Could you briefly tell us a little bit about some of your success stories there?
Yeah, so let me just start by explaining the thesis behind health and aged care. So again, health is a very low digitized industry. There's a lot of opportunity to innovate in that industry and build in more technology. So there's a great opportunity there. It's also a slow market. It doesn't have as long sales cycle as defense, but if you are, depending on what segment of the healthcare industry you're targeting, for instance, hospitals, there usually is quite a long sales cycle there, and very incumbent sort of processes and culture as well. So it's a really interesting industry, but we at Sprint believe that this is such a great opportunity, and with the aging population in particular and the lack of carers and the care worker shortage that we're experiencing, we know that there are going to have to be other ways of caring for our population, and particularly for our elderly population as well. So one of the amazing startups we've invested in the health tech aged care space is called UPS. They're a Melbourne-based startup, and they have a device that sits in an elderly person's home and actually allows them to age at home for longer and in a safer way. It is a much better alternative to something like a lanyard alarm that I know elderly people don't really like wearing anyway. It's not obtrusive, and it allows all sorts of interaction with the elderly person. It can monitor them and alert carers and family if there's inactivity. It can also communicate with them around appointments, medication reminders. It can also even potentially in future track things like the temperature and link up with wearables and things like that. So you're getting a full profile of the elderly person so that they can stay at home for longer. We know that our elderly population live longer and happier when they can stay at home. So that's UmpsLink. They're an incredible Melbourne-based startup.
That's great. And that solves a lot of problems in my mind, especially with the, we've been looking at the PALM scheme, the Pacific Labour Scheme, looking for workforces outside of Australia. You've then got your immigration, that carves out some immigration challenges, I would imagine, as well. Everything else that goes with importing or taking a workforce from another country who probably need it as much as we do, lobbing them here.
Yeah.
So it solves a whole lot of issues for the region, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
Georgia, just quickly, we haven't got much more time here on this subject today, but if there's one thing that you'd like to leave our viewers and listeners with around Sprint and the companies that you back and why you back them, over to you.
Thank you, Todd. So we at Sprint like to invest with a global macroeconomic view. So we look at globally what is happening in the world and what are the growth areas and what really are the investment opportunities that are going to result in the highest value. So as you said, we look at sovereign and defense. We look at the adjacencies such as climate and ag and AI. We invest in our population as well, our health tech and aged care. And these are really, really important, impactful industries that also have so much potential and so much opportunity for value creation. So the way we like to think about our thematics is the next 10 years, is this area, this industry, this pillar going to have more money spent on it in the next 10 years than it has done in the past 10 years. And that is definitely defense. That is definitely aged care and health tech. Climate, we know for sure. So we're really looking forward and investing in those opportunities that are not saturated.
Oh, that's great, Georgia. Well, look, you and the team at Sprint are doing a wonderful job, not just investing in local Australian businesses, but helping take that to the region, to the Indo-Pacific and the world. So keep up the great work, Georgia. Thanks for joining us today, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
Thanks, Todd. Thank you for having me.